Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Welcome to another episode of COVID Conversations with Members Helping Members. I'm Scott McCammon, President and CEO of the Milton Chamber, and today I'm pleased to welcome Rob Duvall from RDC Networks to talk about cybersecurity, what it all means, and how to protect yourself. Morning, Rob.
Good morning. Good morning. All right. Yeah, I guess we'll kind of dive in. This is always a really in-depth subject, and quite frankly, over the last few years, it's been really difficult for, I guess, small business owners and individuals to get a grasp on what all this means. And without scaring anybody, because I'm sure we're scared enough already with the actual virus going around, these are cyber viruses, and we've seen a really big uptick in the last little while of hackers taking advantage of people not knowing how to work remotely, how to work from home, and all their devices. So what I wanted to do is kind of condense it down a little bit, because there is a lot of terminology out there. There's a lot of unknowns, and I wanted to make it simple on how this actually happens and really what you can do to protect yourself. I guess the good news is that really nothing has changed because of COVID in the way of cybersecurity. It's just that so many people now are working from home that they're not protected. And it makes it really difficult for a small business owner. Maybe you own your own company, but you've always worked remotely and you're not working from the house. Your kids are using the same devices in a lot of cases, which is always a little bit dangerous if you're not protected properly. And you're, of course, tethered to your office through either virtual means or through a VPN or other avenues. And because of that, you become more vulnerable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go through maybe the top cyber myths that are out there. And just to give you an idea of what's happening out there in the industry, and I went on a little bit of a rampage this morning trying to make sure that I got right up-to-date information. But hackers are really taking advantage of the coronavirus spread through the computer viruses that are out there. And they're doing it in a way that isn't necessarily infecting you right away, but they're sending out a lot of email. And that email is kind of their avenue. If you go, well, I'm in the cloud and I should be protected, I should be okay. That's not really how they're getting in. How they're getting in is really they're sending out an email that looks like you're logging in to Apple iTunes or your Apple account or your Microsoft account. And they'll do things that kind of scare you, because we're also needed to be connected right now to the office. They're sending out information like your mailbox is almost full, or there's things that are stuck in your sent box. To release them, please fill in your information with your email address and your password and we'll unlock it. And they're putting the logos on there that look exactly like those companies, and people fall for it. And the second that you do that, and I have actually some examples, Carol in our office here, she had one come in the other day. So we took a screen capture of it, and we also hovered over the URL so that you could see it's going nowhere near Microsoft. It's going nowhere near Apple. It's going to some far off land where now they have your login information with your password. And now they're hacking into your system and reading your email and sending things out to your clients. And it becomes very uncomfortable very quickly. So this was just something from the other day, as a matter of fact, just to kind of bring everyone up to date. This was done actually in February, but IBM reported that there was a massive uptick immediately as soon as the COVID results came in and economy started shutting down. So you could see that they were on top of it. They knew people would be vulnerable. They wouldn't be protected at home because they weren't prepared for it. And now we're starting to see some of those results coming in, and they're up about 70%. So it's quite a high jump. The other thing too is people don't realize that their products are also vulnerable to attack. The reason that I put this up here is because this was sent out yesterday by one of our vendors, and printers and scanners are also vulnerable to malware. And you would probably think, well, how is that even possible? Well, these printers and scanners, even the small ones, are computers. They are no different than your regular PC sitting on your desk. When you get a fax in, it has to hold that information. There's a hard drive in it or some type of SSD drive. It's running an operating system just like your computer is. And this is actually the new way of getting into your system. So they go in through your computer, they find out what printer you have, they remote to the printer, and they place a little droplet, a little bit of the malware on that particular printer and scanner. And then that printer and scanner goes out and finds all your devices. It actually acts like a hub or a centralized station, and then reports back to the mothership saying, here's all the things that I found. And it's looking for usernames and passwords and things that you would never think of. So can you put antivirus on a printer or scanner? No, you actually can't. But what you can do is you can make sure that you're protected so that your machine would say, hey, I see something weird going on here, and I should probably make you aware of it. And then we could start looking at maybe factory resetting those printers and scanners, or even doing a firmware update that protects those printers and scanners from getting infected. So they're all very important. Another thing too, just to kind of go into this, is wearables. Most of us are now wearing a ton of wearables, whether we know it or not. Some are actually being put into our clothing. Some are being put into shoes now. And of course, the ones that you wear as a wristwatch, that's very normal. But the thing to remember is the numbers have really increased with people wearing wearable products, not only at home, but in the office. And that's where you start getting into, you know, I don't want to use my data plan, so I want to make sure that I connect my wearable to my Wi-Fi. And you should probably have a guest setup for that Wi-Fi. That has nothing to do with the inside of your network. You should probably make sure that that information is kept completely separate and out on a completely different Wi-Fi connection. The reason for that is because, again, hackers are looking to gain information. They're looking to gain data, and they're looking at ways of trying to make sure that they stop your workflow and hold you for ransom on that. So these are just some of the numbers. We can see a really big uptick for 2019 wearables, and it is almost double of what it was in 2018, which is a staggering number. So the wearables, they're also computers. There's a lot of processing power in them, and it can wreak havoc in your system as well. So I'm just going to play a quick video, and then we'll kind of jump into a little bit of information on how to protect yourself. So just watch this just for a moment.
It doesn't matter how big your business is or what industry you work in, cyber criminals are out there. They want your data, and there are lots of ways to get it. We've all heard about ransomware, botnets, worms, and DDoS attacks, but now hackers can hijack search results to take you to a fake page, put malware on your mobile device, or even attack through the Internet of Things. Developments in technology have given hackers lots of new ways to attack. Here are 3 strategies to protect you and your business. Wearable devices are great for keeping us connected on the go, but because they connect to the internet, they can be hacked. And if you connect a hacked wearable to the company network, the hackers are in. The solution? Connect wearables to a guest network, not your main company network. We also love chat apps, especially on our phones, but personal conversations can be exposed, giving hackers access to private information. So use 2-factor authentication and encrypted apps, and avoid third-party add-ons. Finally, be careful what you download onto your devices. Don't assume that just because an app is on the official store, it's safe. Some apps contain malware that can infect any network the device connects to. Only use apps your IT department okays and connect to a guest network. You can never be 100% safe, but with a tough network and smart users, you just might make your business too much trouble for a hacker to target.
Okay, so just a great little video presentation. We get handed these all the time through Lenovo, Microsoft, IBM, and they're all in the same situation. They're always trying to help the consumer at the end of it try to protect themselves as much as possible. The unfortunate conversation that we always have to have is it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when this happens to you. There's not a single company on the planet that will ever say that there's 100% guarantee, and they'll never put that in writing either, even the antivirus companies, that they'll be able to protect you. Just from us sitting here in the last few minutes, calculating it out, 5 new viruses have already had a variant and have already occurred. So it's near impossible to always protect yourself. But what you can do is you can mitigate your risk. You can bring down that risk to a tolerable level, making sure that you have your backups done. Some of the new viruses that we're seeing also encrypt your backups, which make it very dangerous. So it's always good to have another solution with your company, saying let's figure out a way maybe of getting that data off and maybe into the cloud on a special solution that kind of cuts that umbilical cord after the backup is done. So if a backup does occur and you do get hacked or you do get encrypted, then it's not going to go back up to the cloud. It's just severed that line since the last backup, and then you can pull that data back down. So kind of an important discussion, important to have also with your IT company or your in-house IT people, whatever the case may be. So I did some research this morning. These are very, very new, and I'll give everyone the URLs at the end that you can check this out at. But these are right up to date. You can always notice the date in the right-hand corner. This was on the news just the other day that CPA Canada had a massive breach of 329,000 accounts going out, and that was done through an email phishing scam. So someone had sent a fake email. Someone had filled in the information. That email, unfortunately, was read through a web interface. So they just logged into their webmail because the end user put in their username and their password, and they were able to get other sensitive information in there about logging into corporate accounts. And that's how the hackers got in through the back door. Now, take a look specifically at the very last few words there. It says in April. Look at the date today. It said June 5th. So they were actually in the system since April. And I think that's the biggest thing to take away from this. Often you don't even know that the hackers are in. It's sitting there dormant. Usually it's like a big sleeping system where all of a sudden just one day it unleashes, and they've been grabbing and pulling little bits of information here and there all over the place. So really important to understand that most companies have been breached even a year ago, and you might not even know it today. So it's important to have those antivirus programs up to date as soon as possible. Another one that I pulled up was this one. So if you're ever wondering, how do people like all of a sudden start sending me all these phishing scams, or my junk mailbox is always full? What they do is they get into a company that you deal with and they steal the important information of their entire email list. And then that email list is infected and it goes out to everyone. So you actually may get an email that looks legitimate from a friend of yours or a work colleague. And if you're not quite sure, if something looks a little off, or you were not expecting a certain email from someone, pick up the phone. That is actually the best way to do it. And I know a lot of people don't like doing that these days. They'll send an email to somebody, not realizing that that person's email has been hacked. So the person responding back to you is not the person you think you're talking to. It could very well be the hacker. If they've taken control of that person's email inbox, that poor person may not even know that they've been grabbed. So it's really good to just do a quick call and say, did you send this to me? I wasn't really expecting this from you. And 9 times out of 10, you'll find that they actually didn't know that their own email system has been hacked already. So pretty important. This one's important as well. This tells you that money isn't really an issue here. There's companies that spend hundreds of millions of dollars on high-end security. And even on June 9th, which doesn't make any of us feel any better, the US Aerospace Service in the US was hacked with ransomware. The difference is, I'm sure that they'll be able to find who did this or what country it came from, but often these countries have no extradition or law. And these ransomware breaches and issues are never paid with monetary value. They're paid in Bitcoin, and it's untraceable. So someone saying, you know, you owe me $15,000 to $20,000 in Bitcoin, or we're not going to release your data back to you. They're not kidding. They actually, there's no antivirus that will fix it once it's encrypted. Once that data is encrypted, it's done with a big, long key that only that hacker has, and there's no way of cracking it mathematically. So really important that, that everyone understands how this ransomware works. And this one was just done the other day. This is a June 10th. Nintendo confirmed over 300,000 accounts that were compromised after a cyber attack. It was a lot more than they originally thought. They thought it was about 160,000 accounts that were only hacked or affected. They found another 140, and they're still investigating. This is fairly new. But again, if you're using the same username and password, because often these companies like Nintendo and like Sony, you know, like Microsoft, they all say log in with your regular account. Well, if you're logging in with your email and the password that you use all the time, then of course the hacker now has that information, and that's the danger. They might not be able to get to the credit card information, but which is usually on a separate system, but they did get their account information, and they can start looking at other things that maybe you have actually sent your Visa card at some point, or an expiry date in email. Really important to make sure that you're very careful when you do that. But watch out for these, and I have a URL link that tells you daily who has actually been infected. So computer virus myths, and there's a lot of them out there. I'm going to just kind of debunk some of those myths so that we understand how it happens. So myth number one, computers can infect themselves. So that is actually not true. It always takes somebody or something on the system to be able to execute that. So when someone says, well, I didn't do anything, they probably believe that, and that's totally fine. But at some point they did. Maybe it wasn't today. Maybe it was something, like I said, that happened a couple months ago, or a couple days ago, or maybe even a year ago. It really doesn't matter at that point, but at some point, somebody filled in information, and now it's on their system, and now everything's unleashing. So it's always hard. You can't, you know, go back in time and figure out, well, did I actually click on that, or did I actually fill in a wrong form? But, you know, at that point, don't worry about it. It's not your computer that's doing anything different. It's actually the end user that executed it. It was waiting. Now it's unleashing. Myth number two, error messages mean a virus. That is not true at all. An error message is usually a faulty piece of hardware, in the way of your computer not booting up properly. You know, some people have said out there, oh, my computer was fine yesterday, it didn't boot up today, did I get a virus? Absolutely not. Like any moving part, like your car, all of a sudden it works one day and it doesn't work the next. So computers are very similar that way. You have to just make sure that they're tuned up as much as possible. If they're running slow or something's a little unusual about it, get it looked at. It could just be a faulty piece of hardware that's starting to go. Better safe than sorry. If you can get it fixed now, then it doesn't become a problem later. Myth number three, firewalls will protect my network from viruses. This is a terminology problem. When someone says, I have a firewall, I'm protected from viruses, that's actually not how firewalls work. Firewalls are basically just a line of defense to stop people from easily getting into the inside of your network. If they have the login information, it will let them right on in. If they are a legitimate company sending out very bad emails because they got infected, it will let them right on in. Because the firewall just says, is this a legitimate company on the other end? Do the numbers that I know are supposed to be there match? And if the answer is yes, it comes right on in. A firewall is kind of like cheese. You know, and the more holes you put in it, it becomes Swiss cheese. And you have to get certain things done in your daily business. We're all on a Zoom call right now. That opens up a hole, and that's now creating the Swiss cheese. When you get your email, that's another hole, and they all have different numbers. So the more things that you do, the more holes you have to create in your network if you're going to get any work done at all. There's no way that you can shut them all off. If you do remote access, if you do VPNing, if you do email, if you have video conferencing, they all require certain things to be allowed through your firewall. So the firewall just is the control of that. And there are literally hundreds of thousands of these holes that are pre-programmed. So it's up to a network administrator like myself to say, okay, out of these thousands of holes, and believe it or not, there's 65,000 of them, out of that, I only need these 5. Quite often, people just buy a little router from Best Buy, they plop it in. Well, guess what? Most of those holes are open by default because they know you're working from home and you're not technical. You probably would want to speak to somebody afterwards and say, you know, I am working a lot more from home. Is there something that I can do to make sure that everything's off except these few things? And it's better to set it up that way. Now, if you're tech savvy, by all means, a lot of them are a lot easier to do now. You don't have to be a techno geek to be able to figure this out. But as I said, the consumer line products quite often leave a lot of these things open that they know you're going to want to do, like Netflix. So any of those streaming services are usually on by default. Your kids who are playing games all the time, on by default. So you might want to start looking at that and saying, look, I need to be a little bit more protected, because if I lose my data, you know, that's going to be devastating to me at this point in the game. Myth number 4, you'll know almost immediately when your computer is affected. We saw that that is not the case. We saw that in April, you know, one of those companies was infected and they didn't actually release that information until June 5th. That is a very long time. So you might not even know that you're infected. Keep in mind, you could be working on your system right now and it could be infected. I don't want to scare anybody, but there's a possibility that at some point you clicked on something and it's just sitting in there. Now, it could be destructive or it could not be destructive. It could just be the type of program that wants to place more ads to you and they're referred to as bots. Or it could start, you know, just sending out information arbitrarily unbeknownst to you, and you don't want that to happen. So a lot of these little malware viruses are just there to be more of an annoyance. They're not really going to do anything. When we start getting into the really big ones, the really destructive ones, that's where we have to be a lot more vigilant in making sure we have antivirus and those type of things. And myth number 5, Apple or Mac computers cannot get viruses. That is absolutely not true. We work with a ton of Mac people, and because Mac has become much more popular with the invent of the iPad over a short period of time, we're seeing a massive number of virus increases on Mac computers. I took a screen capture just the other day. This was one. This doesn't look good. So all of a sudden, when you click on any file in that Mac computer, it automatically sends it to a fake email address. And it says, here's a number I want you to call. And that number is, again, a fake number. And they're going to scare you into giving them your credit card, thinking that you're talking to Apple. You are not. You are giving someone somewhere your credit card information. They never fix your problem, and now they've got your money. So this is not an uncommon trick. We see this in regular CRA calls, usually to more elderly people, although no one's immune to this, but they love to target people that all of a sudden get very nervous and say, oh, I really need to do this. I need to fix this myself because I don't have anyone I can call. So they start giving out that information, and next thing you know, they have full control over your accounts. So very common to see this type of thing. The same thing happens on our server side of things. There's no particular server that is more secure than another. They're all in the same boat. Really, it's about monetary value. If you've ever wondered, why do people do this? What is the end game? It's all about the money. It's a multi-billion-dollar money grab. And it's a multi-billion-dollar industry to try and stop all this. So if you've ever wondered why people do it, just follow the money. It works every time. So the top viruses in 2020. I'm not going to get into heavy-duty virus breakdowns, but one of them is phishing. And this is a terrible thing to see happen. Now, Carol actually sent me this yesterday, and this is a great example. So this is an example of something that you might see come in. This is a little grainy, but they're getting much, much better. Some of them have the Apple or Microsoft logo in the corner. It looks completely legit. But when you hover over the link, and I'm just going to blow this up a little bit, right there, you're going to notice that it says login.credline.com. That's not Microsoft. So you can just usually see by hovering over a link and not clicking on it exactly where this is going to and where it has come from. Really important. But notice that it says Carol's name right on the bottom. It says Carol at rdcnetworks.com. You know, you need to click on this because you got stuff stuck. By the way, that never happens. It never will happen. Microsoft will never call you. Apple will never call you to say, you know, we see that you've been infected and we need to help you right away. That's another great scam. Make sure that you're aware that no one is going to reach out to you. Nothing is going to ask you to click on anything to unleash it. No one's ever going to send you a voicemail, a fake voicemail. You know, and that's another thing too. The fake voicemail is becoming very popular. You have a voicemail waiting, click here, and a lot of people do, and that's actually the virus. So when you clicked on it, you've already unleashed it. So again, with your mobile device, can I get an infection on my mobile device? Yes, you can. There are products out there that we can always discuss with you with, but there are products out there that actually can stop that from happening, and they're fairly inexpensive too. Clop ransomware, you know, again, not getting too technical here, but what is ransomware really? I've given an example over here. What it does is it renames all of your files. See that one there that says plus recover in uppercase, lowercase, and there's nothing that you can do. What happens is every file that you click on, it's called that, and it just comes up as kind of gobbledygook. The only one that actually opens up anything is the one that looks like a notepad at the very bottom there, and it will say, you know, your files have been encrypted. You have to call this number and pay in Bitcoin. It's going to be thousands of dollars. You have 5 days until we get rid of our keys. Then you'll never be able to get any of your files back. So they literally give you a countdown saying, here's how many days you have, and if you don't pay up, we're just going to toss away those keys and we won't even be able to help you. So make sure that if you ever see a file like this or weird uppercase, lowercase files in any of your file systems, you have probably been infected at some point, and you should have somebody definitely look into cleaning your system. If it's beyond the point of repair, then you would have to recover from backups, but maybe you've been backing up some of these things. So I've seen it where people have restored their data and they're restoring bad data. It's already been infected, and now it's just a matter of time again until it unleashes and it starts infecting you again. So that's how ransomware works. Fake Windows updates are usually hidden in ransomware. Microsoft will never email you saying, click here for Windows updates. There is a built-in Windows update in your control panel. That's the only thing that you should ever be using. And again, a little bit of a myth. It used to be something a long time ago, but people would go, oh, I don't do Windows updates because it screws up my computer. Well, here's the thing. The security updates that are built into all Windows updates happen every third Tuesday of the month. And it's broken into categories. And one of them, one of the important categories is the security fixes and patches. And by law, all companies, including Apple, including Amazon, including Microsoft, have to actually disclose any holes that they find. Well, guess who reads that? Any holes that they disclose are also known now to the hacker. So if you don't patch your system on a consistent basis and make sure that those security holes are closed, then you're again inviting more Swiss cheese in. You're just allowing people to come on into your system because they'll know where those vulnerabilities are. They're looking for that. Same thing going from an old system like Windows 7 to Windows 10. Why was everyone told to get off Windows 7 as fast as possible? Because they're not coming out with security patches anymore for that product. That product ended actually last year. So if you still have that product, you should definitely look in upgrading because no security patches have happened for an entire year. So you got to make sure that you protect yourself as much as possible. The game over. Now, Zeus has been around a very long time. What it does is, this is particularly nasty, it goes out as a game. And if you let your kids use your laptop or your desktop at home, they could accidentally infect themselves. And what it does is it goes out and it finds 5,000 of its best friends. And it starts looking for these other little modules that look at bank accounts and look at login information. And those are things that are usually kept within your web browser, whether it be Internet Explorer, Safari, or even Chrome, which is the vast majority of what people use is Google Chrome. And what it does is it grabs that information and sends it somewhere else without your knowledge. And a lot of people like hitting that don't forget my password or log me in automatically, because of course we all try and remember our passwords, but it gets harder and harder over time. Well, that's a vulnerability. And again, you know, even Google Chrome has its own update. You should probably make sure that you're as up to date as possible, because they try and patch and fix those holes. But it's really important that that everyone understands that this particular one is looking for banking information. Now, ransomware as a service, this is something that is brand new. And what it does is it goes out and grabs a little bit from about 5 or 10 computers, and it waits for people to keep adding to that information. Then it sends that information as a package, gives it to the hackers at the back end, and then they have all the information to go in and attack. So this could sit on your systems as little bits and pieces, which are almost undetectable, but it goes in as little bits and pieces, and then it sends it directly to a group of hackers on the day that they want to actually carry this out. This could sit on your system for an entire couple years, and you might not even know it. So make sure, again, you know, you use good antivirus software. This will fix your problem. And of course, the IoT devices. The Internet of Things is becoming very, very awkward. We saw that when COVID happened, everyone was hopping on Zoom. Zoom got in trouble because they would allow anybody to go into their meeting. And some of them were very high-end sensitive meetings, and people were watching what was going on. We saw this before COVID with video doorbells and baby monitor speakers, where hackers got into that. They would start talking in the house, and they didn't know how to get rid of the hacker. So again, it's up to the manufacturer to start protecting those devices, but please keep in mind that once you have these devices talking to the World Wide Web in any way, shape, or form, you do open yourself a little bit up to having those devices attacked. So hopefully you keep those up to date. If it ever asks you to update them, please do. So top suggestions for protection. Here's some of them. I'm just going to go through a quick list here. Connect to a secure network, always. Make sure, now how do you do that if you're working from home? That's always a tough one, because you know, you're connecting to your office and you would consider that to be a secure network. What I would recommend is that whoever is in charge of a small team, let's just say it's a small company of 2 people, someone has to always make that call saying, okay, I'm going to allow you to come into my system or get to our data, but here are the 3 things that I need to make sure you're doing from home. Number 1 is that computer, let's say, is just for you, or you have a login to just your side of the computer. Number 2, you have to have antivirus. You have to make sure that, you know, you're not connecting to any of our stuff unless you have antivirus. And probably number 3 is making sure that if you're on Wi-Fi, you have 2 different setups. One is called guest, which keeps them away from your stuff, which is maybe where all your devices hook into. So that's your wearables, that's the kids' phones. Everybody should be using the guest network. You should have your own network, and you can call it, you know, company, and then that shows up under your Wi-Fi connection, and it has a secure password. So really important to kind of keep the 2 worlds separate as we do this more working from home. Really, really important. And it does make a difference because when those product gets hacked, they can't see the other side. And it's like this dividing line. It's this concrete wall between the 2. Enable and configure a firewall. Very important. If you do not have a firewall and you are connecting directly to that Bell modem or that Cogeco modem or whatever the case may be, It is the cheapest investment you can make to protect yourself. A firewall will not stop a virus, but it will stop people from getting in from the outside. So something that you should take away from this is, for a $100 investment, you can get a decent router. It's not a high-end router. The bigger that you go on routers, of course, determines the amount of people that you have on your corporate network and if it's programmable or not. But usually the ones that are just out of the box for your home are completely sufficient enough just to make sure that they're staying on the outside. Now, as I said, a lot of those firewalls come with Wi-Fi. So again, make sure that you read the instructions carefully before you purchase, that you can actually have a guest Wi-Fi account and you can have an interior corporate account. It used to be more of an issue years ago. So if you're using an old firewall router, you probably don't have that choice. But I can tell you, anything that is 2 to 3 years, if you've bought it since then, you're going to see that they have those options already baked into the system. You're not going to have to, get rid of all your stuff, but definitely make sure that you have it. Use antivirus and anti-spyware. Antivirus is probably the most important thing that you can put on your devices, and also your portable devices. Now, I will show you something at the end. It's about $40 to $50 a month, depending on what service you get. But for $40, or not a month, I'm sorry, $40 a year, that's a very cheap investment to make sure that you have something that is protecting you immediately. We have a web interface that we use that handle pretty much all our clients. And when we go in there, we're alerted immediately when someone's been infected, if it's been cleaned up, if it requires somebody to go and take a look at that machine or bring it offline. But there's something else that's really good, is that same product that we've made sure we vetted also can go on your mobile devices, and a lot of them don't. A lot of them, it's just the computer and nothing else. If you have a product that can do both the computer and your mobile device, that is a huge takeaway. And what's really nice is we even have the capability, if you lose your device, to say factory reset that device remotely, to wipe it clean. We can do all kinds of things if you've lost your device, because most people carry their documents on their device now. And there are some pretty cool ways that if someone just has a little bit of knowledge on how to hack in, they might be able to get to some of that information. Really important that you protect yourself, not only when the device is physically in your hands, but when you no longer have that device in your hands anymore and you can't find it or it's been stolen. So antivirus programs, #1 right there. Remove any unnecessary software. A lot of hacks come in through software that maybe you've passed through over time. This happened to Lenovo years ago. They sent out consumer laptops with a bunch of extra tools, and then they found out that it had malware on it. And they apologized profusely, and actually something moving forward, this is about 6 years ago, something moving forward is none of their products come with pre-installed software anymore. When you pull it out of the box, it is pretty raw, and you have to put everything on. That's good for me, because I always hated going through and uninstalling all this garbage. But something that happens all the time with HP is you'll notice that they're under the control panel, there's 50 or 60 other products that they want you to buy and purchase when you first open up that laptop. And it does slow your system down. I'm not saying that they have malware. This was something specific at the time that was a Lenovo issue. But having too many products come when you first open that computer, never a good sign. Just strip it down, make sure it's pretty raw, and then you can make the decision as you go forward to putting those products in. So always go through and check that. And the POLP, Principle of Least Privilege. Now, without, again, getting technical, a lot of companies just allow their users to do whatever they want. They go, we don't have time. We got to have this person running Zoom today, and just let it go right on in. Well, you'll notice that they have local administrative rights on that computer. And if you don't, then it usually comes up with a pop-up box saying, hey, put in your username and your password of someone who does have a privilege to do this. It's not so much of a problem in a small company of 5 people, but when you start getting bigger, when you get into the 10, 20, 30, much higher into the hundreds, you really need to rein that in. because people will find the point of least resistance. They just want to get their stuff done. They don't understand how all this works. How many of us have ever said, you know, I'm not very technical, so I don't understand a lot of this stuff. Well, if that is the case, then you really have to put your trust into making sure that, you know, if you want those products in there, then at that point, someone has to give privilege, because they should vet it and say, I've never seen this product before. You know, can you tell me a bit about it? I'll do some research. I'll make sure I download the product from a safe site for you. That's probably the better way to go than just kind of the Wild West. And using a secure browser, make sure you use a trusted web browser. There are a lot of free ones out there. There's Opera, there's Firefox, there's Chrome, Edge, Safari, the list goes on. But you know, you really can't just let everybody use any browser that they want. Quite frankly, because there's a lot of modules and there's a lot of technology in it that makes sure that it just allows anything in. Edge, which is the built-in Windows 10 Microsoft one, if you hit a fake website, it actually will come up as a red screen. It will say this site actually is untrusted. I could open up the exact same website in Firefox and it'll let me right in. So, you know, you really have to choose, and I know that sometimes you don't have a choice. I'm thinking of financial companies. There's some that can only use Firefox, funny enough. And it's because it allows a program within a program to run. But doesn't that sound a little dangerous? Because a program within a program, that means a program can run within Firefox as a separate program that you never installed. And of course, that sounds a lot like malware to me. That sounds like a Trojan to me. And that's why you have to be careful, making sure that you have those machines protected if you are going to use or have to use another web browser that kind of runs a little bit loosey-goosey with the system. So make sure you kind of choose your browser, make sure you're protected, and those are two lines of defenses that are going to work out well for you. And update often. You know, updating your system is the cheapest and easiest way. It's never a good time. And I know that these updates happen on a continuous basis, but really important to make sure that the patches and the fixes are as up to date as humanly possible. Windows 10, they're always going to call it kind of Windows 10 just to bring that online for everybody. It used to be, you know, Windows XP and then Windows 7 and then Windows 8 and 8.1, and the numbers kept changing. Now we have what are called version numbers. And when Windows 10 first came out, it was on version 1500. We're already past that. It was at 1906 last week. Now it's at 2047. So what it does is it just says, you know what, we're going to just move this new technical module into the system and place it in there, and you still can use Windows the way that you're used to, so no major changes. All they're going to start doing is making sure that these things are handled modularly moving forward. And that was the big major change to Windows 10. They don't have to completely reinstall the operating system again from scratch or have the latest and greatest. These modules just go in and say, it wasn't an issue of a year ago, it's an issue today. We have a fix for it. We're sliding in this module. I think you're going to see moving forward that that they have a much bigger handle on this. Even Mac does the same thing. Your Mac runs in modules now, so that those particular versions aren't such a big killer to the system where you're waiting 3 or 4 hours for a Windows update or an Apple update. These are happening much faster in real time now. Security best practices. Do not use dictionary words for your passwords. We've seen this, that it's still the top 10 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or QWERTY, or you know, my password is password. Do not do that, because what they do, and I have hacks that I've shown live before, where I have the entire dictionary as a Word document, and I run a program that looks against that. So if I know your username, I'll just try every word in the dictionary first within 5, 6 seconds. And if it doesn't pass any of those, then it starts doing what's called a brute force crack. And a brute force crack is just a mathematical calculation that says within so number of days, hours, minutes, I'll be able to hack into that particular password. Now, the nice part is, if you use alphabets, alphanumeric, we call it, alphabets and numbers, even some symbols in there, and it doesn't have to be super long, the mathematical certainty of them getting in would be around a few thousand years, and it depends on the type of processing power. So is someone going to sit there and do that? No, they're looking for the easy kill. They're looking for the easy way to get into the system. So just protect yourself. Don't use something in the dictionary. I know it's hard, but try and come up with an alphanumeric password. Do not use illegal software. Oh boy. People who download illegal software often get infected because it's not the software, it's the person who bundled it. It's the person who said, I've cracked it, and they've used special cracking software for that software key. And they've circumvented the security in a brilliant way. You know, again, they're opening up a bunch of holes on that system, and often these downloads from third-party sites, which are illegal in themselves, also have put malware bots on there to, again, contact them about you. So they make it very attractive. For example, Adobe Photoshop used to be the largest hacked key on the planet. Everybody was sharing Adobe Photoshop, and there were sites out there that said, hey, you know, we've cracked it, we've posted it, go ahead and download this big, you know, 2 gig file, and congratulations, you can have Adobe Photoshop. And every single time there was malware in it, all the time. The program would work, you would never know, and one day it would just nail you. So make sure that you use legal software. You won't be sorry for that. Have a backup. Now, some of these new variants are actually encrypting the backups. If you're going to have a backup, make sure that you maybe swap it out, have a backup, put it away. If you're going to leave it plugged in all the time, you know, once again, that's totally fine, but you could have a different backup plan. There are third-party ways of having your data backed up to the cloud. We do this as small as 1 person to 500 people. Is there a cost? Yes. Is it expensive? It used to be. It's not anymore. And again, with COVID, I guess this is the bonus to having COVID at this point, not you having COVID, but having COVID as an issue, is that the prices have actually on clouded services have actually come down. Because the masses, once again, it's supply and demand, but they've figured out better ways to do it. You're going to see in the next little while more free things in the way of cloud services in a trial, or maybe even free services in the way of, you know, in the way of Zoom and teleconferencing, things like that. But if you want to do all the other cool stuff, then, you know, it's a module that you'll have to pay for. You're going to start seeing a lot more of that. But having a good backup strategy is never a bad idea. And if you asked me this a short year ago, I would say to a small company that was just backing up QuickBooks as an example, or simply accounting, you know, you would probably have to spend maybe $70 a month having that data backed up. Now you're probably talking about $15 to $20. And that's a big peace of mind, having an off-site backup strategy. It's probably a good idea to make sure that you have that discussion, or reach out to any of us and we'll have that discussion with you. So just before I sign off here, I just wanted to show you a website, and I'm hoping that you can see this right now. But this is a great example, and I'll make sure that I give this to you. It's a security breaches website that tells you right up to date who's been hacked and when they've been hacked. Now you'll notice there's a new one today, and this particular one, it's a breach at Babylon Health, wherever that is, that was able to watch video consultations with their doctor. And this is where you get people making IT decisions without having a serious conversation. Often a doctor will say, I need to have this, and we need to have this right away because we're not allowing anyone into our offices. Well, wait a second. That could very well be the difference between a free version of doing some sort of conference call and a paid version, where you know it's secure end-to-end, it's encrypted, no one's allowed to enter that unless it's done on both sides. There's a bunch of things that you should take into account, but that is a really good one to see right now. So no one, again, is immune to being breached. So let me just extend this session here. Here's another one, using some sort of antivirus. And what I really like is, this is my Samsung, this is my Android device. It allows me also to control my Android device if it should get lost, stolen, hacked. I can factory reset, locate it, do all kinds of things, but it's also protecting me. because it's a little bit of a misnomer going, well, you know, if it's on the store, then it should be fine. I guarantee you, if you just Google Android, you know, infected games, you'll see that people have placed things on the Android app in the Android store. And same thing with Apple, it's happened to them too. They've placed things there that have bypassed certain security, didn't get caught until later, then it's been yanked from the Play Store. And if it's been yanked from the Play Store, that's all well and fine. But what about those people that already have it? And especially if your kids are using your phone, you know, you've handed it to them and say, go ahead and play this while I'm having a conversation, or whatever the case may be. They could have that infected device now coming into your corporate environment or into your home. So you got to make sure that it's healthy, that it's constantly being scanned, and for, you know, pennies a day, you could probably make sure that you have peace of mind on this. So really good thing. But this is an example of having a proper antivirus system. It's something that is clouded. It's something that I can control. I can control my users. I can control devices, making sure that they're all up to date and ready to go. And then I could find out if anything has actually happened to the system over a period of time. And, you know, these are just kind of statistics, but nothing's going bad over here at RDC Networks. But if it did, and there are times that we click on things purposely to find out, you know, is this a new variant? Is there a problem? These numbers will immediately change. I'll make sure that I get a backup right away, and I can start dealing with the problem. So there's all kinds of things that you can do. All right. Okay, so I'm just going to leave that information up on the screen for now. I'm sure there's going to be some questions. I'm just going to check and see what the Q&A says. Okay, so there's going to be a Q&A.
Yeah, so a reminder to everyone that the Q&A box is at the bottom of the Zoom screen. But before we get into the Q&A, Rob, I know you opened up the program talking about this, but you know, 3 months ago, whenever it was, we all got forced to move into our home offices, and and you know, that created a lot of vulnerability because it happened overnight. We weren't ready for it, so a lot of systems weren't in place, and so that's why we wanted to make sure that we did this webinar today, because you know, cybersecurity is a big issue, and so one of the questions that I have for you is, a lot of times computers will have multiple antivirus programs. So you may get one through your internet provider. You may have already had one set up on your computer. Then you go and buy another one. Now you may have 2, 3, 4 antivirus programs on your system. Do they compete with one another, or is that a benefit to have multiple?
There is no benefit to having multiple. I'm glad you brought that up. Actually, it's a bit of a problem. So what happens is security is cumulative. So if you have read access to one thing and read-write access to another, you now have read-write access. And the problem is when you have multiple products and they're all competing for the same space, one could let it in and the other one, it has to stand down. It's whatever one kind of kicks in first. They run as a service. So it's really important to make sure that you choose what it is that you're using. Pick a product, get rid of all the others, and don't use them. Whatever product that happens to be. And I'm like, we have our own products that we choose, but I'm not married to particularly any of them. The reason that we choose the products that we choose for our clients is ease of access, and you know, we've tested them, and they're working correctly.
You know, every time we go into a website, it's asking us to accept cookies, and a lot of times you can't move forward in a website until you accept the cookie.
Right.
So how do we know when they're good cookies and bad cookies? Do we accept them all? Do we not accept?
If you have proper antivirus programs, you can accept them all, and the antivirus program would be set up to scan the cookie. So in our case, that interface that you saw, I can go in there and I can start controlling every aspect of what it is that it's scanning for and looking for. Now, if you're a technical company, let's say you make games, the chances of me backing off some of those things are pretty good. because developers need to access things out of the norm. And what happens is the tighter that you make your antivirus scan everything, the slower the system runs. In the case of an end user, just your average person like you and I are talking, I would turn those things on, because a developer would know what they're supposed to click on and an end user would not. An end user would make a mistake and just, well, it said I needed to do this. I just said, yeah. And poof, all of a sudden you have a problem. Now, yeah, so in the case of you, Scott, I know what product you have. You're perfectly fine to accept those cookies because I know that it's scanning for all that.
You talked about Swiss cheese and all the holes that we have in our cheese.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You know, when we started working from home, you know, a lot of us started using our home systems, so we don't have the level of protection on some of our systems that we would have back at the office.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a tough question for you to answer, but it just makes me wonder if, you know, post-COVID, whether a lot of computer systems now are going to have things that are buried in systems that we don't know about that will be activated 2, 3, 6 months from now.
We're seeing that already. So another great question. You might not know that you've become vulnerable because everyone panicked. Everyone clicked on everything to get remote access very, very quickly without ever having a discussion, a demonstration, whatever the case is. And because of that, because of click mania, I like to call it, people have said, yes, I need this, I need this, I need this, or haven't actually figured out what modules they need. So they just start clicking on everything and then sooner or later it just works. We call them add-ins, and I'm sure that you've seen those before. And add-ins can be a problem as well. I mean, you're working from home now. Before you kind of had that network guru or that, you know, that IT, I guess, IT support and help that you were used to in your office, and now you're working from home, so you're kind of your own IT person. And because of that, I think what we're going to see, and we're seeing it already, is a lot of companies are now pulling back. They're going, okay, COVID's almost over. I think a lot of people are still going to want to work from home, whether it be for comfort or because they didn't realize that they, you know, were actually getting more done. Some people do. It depends on the individual. It depends on the person. So what I will always recommend is that you come up with a plan, come up with an idea that says, hey, we have to start protecting ourselves. If you're working from home, our IT person needs to put these couple products on for you to make sure you're protected and we're protected. And then at least we've followed, you know, kind of a game plan on that. It's going to be important moving forward.
So is there an easy way for people to be checking their computers or their systems to make sure that they are secure?
The best thing to do, the best thing to do would be maybe to go to malwarebytes.com. I can share these links afterwards if everyone would like. And I'll just send them to Ashley and she can post them, I guess, on the site or in a slide. I'll just add it to the slide if anyone wants the slide deck. And then that way it would be a little bit easier because it'll scan through. But just here's the thing. When you don't have a paid product, and malware is just malware, it's like not an antivirus program, but it will tell you vulnerabilities and it'll show you what has come into your system and maybe has been sitting there a very long time. You will have a little bit of a heart attack because it's going to show you everything that's happened since you've had your computer. And some of them could be nasty and some of them could be fine. And you probably never knew that they were there before. So at that point, you should probably reach out and go, okay, I know I have a problem here. What is it that we should be doing to make sure that it cleans it up and that we know that we're safe? So if you go to malwarebytes.com, that is probably the best place to grab that little scanner. And it'll scan your system and it'll tell you what nasty stuff is in there already.
So one question that's come in is, if you're a home-based business that utilizes computers for personal and business use, is it best practice to create separate window user accounts for each, as well as logging into different Wi-Fi networks depending on the use, whether it's business or personal use, or is 2 separate computers really the only option?
No, I like the idea of having multiple Windows accounts. So if you're, doing your own thing and you're on a different Windows account, it's not on the corporate side of things. Now, is it really necessary? I'd be more concerned if you had kids using the computer. If it's just you, if you have proper antivirus, you're connected to a corporate network and not the guest Wi-Fi where everyone else is connecting, including your mobile devices. Even if the mobile device is corporate, throw it on the guest account. Keep it separate. Then that way something accidentally can't get in from one side to the other. You're probably still okay to have the one account if you're in control of that laptop or that desktop. If you're in control of that laptop and desktop, it wouldn't have really mattered if you clicked on something bad on the corporate side versus the private side, because it's still using the same antivirus program, if that makes any sense.
So again, a lot of people using home computers for dual purpose, personal and business. And on the personal side, they're probably downloading programs to do gardening, landscaping, whatever it may be. If you're not going through the app stores, how do you know whether a program is a good one, or whether somebody, it's a program that's there just phishing or trying to do something nasty?
Yeah, it's almost impossible to do that without proper antivirus. I can tell you this: if you go to a reputable website, you're going to be okay 9 times out of 10. And so if you're Googling, make sure that you really read where that's coming from. The extension at the end indicates the country it's coming from. If you click on anything that has an ending of .ru, that's Russia. I wouldn't be clicking on that. Try and stick to something North American wise or Canadian, like a .ca. They're usually safe bets. And of course, again, take a look and see if it's a review. Like if someone says, this is on a blog and I want you to click on my blog, try and stay away from those if you really want to be safe, just because you're not putting on apps really on a computer, right? Like you're surfing the web. If it was a phone, then you're kind of stuck to the app. That's probably the best explanation I can give. So just always be careful.
We have someone else saying they have a question, but I don't see anything in the Q&A box.
Okay.
But okay, so I'll just get. Oh, here it is. Is CNET good for downloads?
It used to be. I would say no. CNET is full of ads, and those ads have been a problem in the past. CNET got taken over by Yahoo, and Yahoo has had a lot of breaches. I'd stay away from it.
I know earlier you talked about Edge versus Chrome.
Yes.
And recommending really that Edge may be the better one to use. But I know when you go to the federal government website, they say use Chrome because it's better to download things from the federal government using Chrome. So
right. Yeah,
so,
and I'm fine with both, by the way. One will have some cooler, newer gadgets than the other, but Chrome also updates and patches their product without you having to force it automatically in the back end. So I'm actually happy with both. They're slightly different technologies. They both talk the same language, but one allows some older code. And the thing with government is often they're not as up to date as they should be. They tend to stick on the older code. They still do faxing. I mean, so you're probably looking at it going, why are they recommending one over the other? That's the main reason, is because a lot of the new stuff is called HTML5, and although Chrome runs it, it still runs a lot of the old stuff too. So
that's great. I don't think we have any more questions, and I think we're running out of time as well.
Okay.
So Rob, I want to thank you for doing this. Again, it's a very important topic and one that we for sure wanted to have as part of our COVID conversations. I think next week is your 16th anniversary of RDC Networks, if I'm right.
It is. Yes, it is.
So obviously, that combined with your private sector or your experience before you became an entrepreneur, it's obvious that you know what you're talking about and have that expertise. So I'm so glad that you took the time today to share it with us.
Anytime.
So on behalf of everyone that tuned in today, thank you, Rob, and That's it for today's episode of COVID Conversation. See you next time.
Take care.